Welcome to the Feel Good Lab podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Gresh. Join me as we bring together the brightest minds in health and wellness, covering topics from sleep and nutrition to exercise and mindfulness. Our goal is to give you actionable advice to optimize your health and ultimately to feel good. All right. Welcome to another episode of the Feel Good Lab podcast. And today I've got a good friend of mine, somebody I'm excited to learn from, even though, Julie, you're a few years younger than me. I really look up to you in the fitness space. So before I give it to you to kind of introduce yourself, one of the things that I found so interesting about you is this wave of wellness in college. When I was in college, I don't want to date myself, but it was 2005-ish.
Yep.
There were not many people that were talking about diet, exercise, not drinking. That wasn't really a thing and a trend. And so when I found you and your content, obviously we share the same alma mater, the University of Connecticut. But I was just kind of blown away at like the level of commitment that you had at such a young age to really focusing on your health. So I'd love you to introduce yourself, but also start with like what drove you down this path?
Yeah, so I'm Julie. I'm Julie LaFit on Instagram and TikTok. I make like wellness, health, fitness content, workouts. I share what I eat. I just kind of share my fitness journey. And it's like progression. So I feel like historically college is kind of, like associated with eating ramen and like sleeping until 12 o'clock. And I remember in high school, I was super anxious about that because my senior year of high school, like COVID had just happened. I feel like everyone was kind of getting on like the health and wellness trends. And I got really into that. And I was like, oh no, like I'm going to go to college and I'm going to throw all this away. And I was super anxious about it. And I went to school and immediately I found that when I'd go out at night, I always felt less fulfilled than when I'd go to the gym the next morning. So I was like, okay, I don't have to do this if this isn't fulfilling to me. I don't have to drink if that doesn't make me happy. So I got super into my health, wellness, fitness, and kind of like taught myself a lot of things and learned from trial and error what works for me. And so then I started sharing it on social media and realized that it's kind of a new space of younger people discovering health and wellness and kind of skipping like the part of your life where you are just like super unhealthy and don't really care about your health. I feel like a lot of people are a lot more health focused these days, like especially younger people my age. So yeah, it's been super cool and like super nice to be able to relate to a lot of people because I feel like I look around and I'm like, oh my God, like no one's similar to me. I feel like kind of alone. And then I share on social media and so many people were like, I'm so glad you're sharing this. Like I feel the same way. So it's just been nice to like kind of open up the conversation of you don't have to kind of live the stereotypical college experience if that doesn't fulfill you, and you can be healthy and you can care about your health and you can also have a balance, and like you don't have to swing one way or the other. You can kind of incorporate all realms of the college experience into your life and still live like a healthy and fulfilling lifestyle in college.
Yeah. I mean, since we started working together, there's been a handful of people of your followers that have reached out and we've done some work with at the Feel Good Lab. And so you're totally right. Like I realized just how big your audience is. So when you started, were you like, hey, I want to be, I'll use the term influencer, but was that your goal, or were you just kind of like sharing what you were doing and it took off?
I was just kind of sharing what I was doing, and it honestly was just like luck and consistency. I got into like the fitness space very early on TikTok, and I kind of capitalized off creating workouts for people who weren't as familiar in the gym, because a lot of people in the fitness space, like they'll post these workouts that if you're a beginner, you don't really go to the gym, it's very overwhelming and you're not going to commit to that because you're like, I don't know how to do these exercises. I feel embarrassed. I feel uncomfortable in the gym. So I really wanted to create a page people could go to who are just starting their fitness journey, and make it very attainable
Yeah, and
And
approachable because,
yes,
like, even
approachable.
me, one of the cool things is a lot of people in your shoes, and I'm not putting anybody down, but the fitness space is kind of a look at me, you know, that's a lot of the post, but yours is
Yeah.
not at all.
Yeah.
Yours is like you share it all. We
Yeah.
talk a lot about diet. We'll get into that in a little bit. You're sharing before and after pictures, things that
Yes.
are not particularly flattering,
Yep.
but I think that's what is connecting with people so well, right?
Exactly. And I share that because I kind of want to build my credibility. Like, you see a million videos of like, this is what I eat, this is what I did. And I want to share like what I did and how it worked for me because like I want other people to feel the same way I did when I finally like incorporated things that started working for me and really maximize my like fitness journey and my experience and made me happier and like healthier because it's really hard as a consumer. Like I can't even imagine what it's like being on the other side and being like, okay, this person told me to do this thing and then this person told me to do something else and they're conflicting. So I just kind of want to show my credibility. I always kind of push like everybody is different, but this is just what works for me.
Yeah. And, you know, you're 100% right. Everybody is different. It's one of our core tenets at the Feel Good Lab. It's why we launch some of our more personalized testing because there's no one size fits all. It's like keto versus paleo versus meat only. It's like these
Yeah.
things do work for a lot of
Hmm.
people, but everyone's different and it's important you find yourself. And the other thing you mentioned earlier was about posting, but this goes to everything, especially fitness, consistency. It
Hmm.
doesn't really matter if you have it perfect. The reality is, because I was listening to a podcast this morning that you were on, and you were saying you look back at some of your early videos and you cringe. And
Yeah.
that's the goal. The goal
Yeah.
is that you're going to make so much progress. Of course, you're going to cringe. I look back on my early podcasts and cringe, and hopefully one day I look back on this one and cringe. Nothing to do with you, but at
Yeah.
myself, because we want to consistently be getting so much better. But the key
Exactly.
is the consistency. If you
For
don't
sure.
do it consistently, you're not going to make any progress. It doesn't matter how perfect your form is, how perfect your all the other pieces are, right?
Exactly. That's one of my favorite like mindsets that applies to everything like my content creation, my fitness journey, my like eating, like consistency is more important than perfection because you can eat perfect one day and if you don't do it the next day like it doesn't matter or you can like go to the gym and do everything perfect one day a week but if you're not going every single day of the week like it doesn't really matter like it is far more valuable to be consistent at something than to be perfect at something like because you're going to be doing the thing you're consistent at more times than doing the thing you're perfect at. So yeah, that's like one of my favorite like mantras and mindsets and outlooks.
And so, for our audience that's maybe watching, I mean, Julie is in incredible shape. Obviously, you're in your prime, right? You're what, 20 years old?
Yes, I'm 20.
Yeah. So, but even with that being said, like, when I genuinely look up to you from a wellness standpoint, obviously, I don't have the same aspirations to go to the gym for 1 to 2 hours a day and whatnot, but it's also like, it's more than that for you. It's
Mhm.
diet, it's sleep, it's lifestyle, it's work-life balance, it's mental
Mhm.
health. So
Yep.
walk us through like a day in the life of Julie Lawton and, what are the things that when you think of wellness, like what is the entire puzzle? It's obviously not just lifting weights.
Yes. So I like to wake up very early, um, around like 5 in the morning, especially on school days, because something about me is I have super duper bad ADHD. So like when I wake up earlier, I feel like I'm kind of getting ahead of the day because it takes me a little bit longer to do things. So I like to wake up and I immediately like to journal, do my devotionals, just because it kind of sets an intention for the day. And then I will eat my little pre-workout snack. I don't eat my breakfast like right away. I just kind of eat like carb protein. I do usually like rice cake and peanut butter. And then I go to the gym and I'm on like a push pull leg split. So I'll do a push day, pull day, leg day. Um, and yeah, those early hours in the morning are very valuable to me because again, I get like distracted super easily. So like no one's distracting me, like no one's talking to me. It's like my time. Then I go back home, obviously get ready for class. And then go to class, go to the library, and then later in the day, I'll find time to do cardio or a walk. So I usually do 2 workouts a day, one like weight training based and then one like cardio based, just because cardio is more for my like mental health,
Hmm.
because I like to listen to my music, listen to a podcast. And then in terms of like my night routine, I really like to wind down, read a book. Right now I'm reading the Arnold Schwarzenegger book. And it's super awesome. So yeah, reading a book, and then I like to drink my little cherry juice bedtime mocktail with cherry juice, magnesium, light my candles, go to bed. So yeah, it's like I like to say I live a very simple life, but like that's what I like. I like very like low, like I don't even know how to describe it. Like I don't like a lot of like
Distractions.
chaos,
Yeah.
distractions. In terms of like relationships, like have like a few good, really good friends, really prioritize like good relationships. And yeah,
I
like I
see,
just live
like, I
like
mean,
a
honestly,
good
if I
life.
think back to when I was in college, like me and my friends, we didn't know what we didn't know. And it was one of the
Yeah,
best times of my life, don't get me
yeah,
wrong. But I look at you and I'm like, holy cow. Like, again, it's not like any of us have it figured out, but
yeah.
you're so far along, in understanding who you are, what makes you happy. It's
Mhm.
genuinely impressive. You know,
Thank you.
do you give yourself flexibility though? I know for me, I struggle with giving myself the structure. So I hear you say that all and I'm like, whoa. Like even for me to do one or two of those things, and I have some routines
Yeah,
I do. I'm not, but
yeah,
that is very structured, and that's also why you get the results you get because you're
yeah.
focused and structured. How do you deal with the flexibility? Say a friend calls you and it's like, "Hey, let's go to the movies tonight."
So that is something that I actually say a lot. Like my schedule gives me more freedom, I think, because when I wake up and I don't have any sort of intention for the day, I find myself getting more stressed out because I'm like, oh, like I should be doing this, I should be doing that. And obviously I make exceptions, because at the end of the day, like I'm gonna remember spending time with my friends more than I'm gonna remember going on that walk, or more than that's gonna be valuable to like my overall life and like happiness. But I think it's definitely a balance. And if you carve out specific times to do those things, it doesn't really become an issue. Like it the reason I wake up so early and like go to the gym is because no one's gonna be calling me at that time and being like, want to go do
Yeah,
this. So yeah, I feel like my structure and schedule gives me more freedom because I have like times to do everything and kind of know my intentions for the day, know what I have to get done. And when I wake up and I don't have like any sort of intentions, I get way more stressed out, I feel. So but it's definitely again a healthy balance. I'm never gonna like say no to a friend so I can go work out, which is something I've definitely worked on, and I've shared that on my social media that like the gym's always going to be there, but your friends aren't. Like these are very short years in college. So it's definitely important to like prioritize relationships over everything, and like but it's definitely a healthy balance. And also I found a lot of like-minded friends. Like we can do those things together. Like, oh, like I'm about to go on a walk, but my friend calls me, let's go on a walk together. Oh, I'm about to go to the
mhm,
gym, but my friend calls me, we'll go together. Like kind of finding friends with similar interests and like a similar want to like better themselves and do those kind of things is very helpful because you can just do them with your friends and it's super fulfilling.
totally. And hearing you say that, I started to give myself a little more credit, but then it like hit me. So there's this. I'm always been a night owl my whole life. I
Mhm.
hate getting up in the morning. Even like, I used to be the kid going to high school. I literally would wake up 1 minute before I got in my car, like one
Oh,
minute.
that was me in
And
high school.
but you start the day, and I do that. That's translated into the rest of my life. But you
Mhm.
start the day almost like behind the eight ball, and you're
Yeah.
fighting to catch up. But what I do is I stay up really late, and I get a lot of great work done between like 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. To the same point you're talking about at 5 a.m. Nobody's awake. The problem
Mhm.
is I feel like I'm still trying to catch up. So that
Mhm.
work for those 4 hours is me catching up versus if I were to
Mhm.
get up at 5 a.m. and then that 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. is me getting ahead. It's the same quality of work. Now I probably
Mhm.
am a little bit better later in the day. That's just the way my body is. But the mindset that I would carry with me, there's been a handful of days where I've gotten up early and I used to play basketball at 5:30 a.m. and
Yeah.
then I would work afterwards. I would feel so good that I
Yeah.
accomplished those things already. It does carry over and the momentum builds throughout the day. So even
Exactly.
though I do find that having that time to myself when I'm not getting bothered, I can get my good deep work done. I do still want to try to get it earlier in the day
Yeah.
because I feel like that just the way I feel about myself,
Mhm.
that the positive thought process of like being happy and proud that I was able to start my day on my terms and
Yep.
not just like looking at my phone at 8:30 and having 10 emails already I got to deal with
Yep.
and
That's
now being in reactivity mode, right?
exactly. Like that's kind of how I feel because like you said, like in high school, I'd literally wake up like a minute before I had to leave. And I would like my first emotion was of the day was stress. And that sets the whole tone to your day. So when I wake up like at 5 in the morning, my like first emotion of the day is like, okay, yes, like I woke up and I'm ready to like do all this stuff. Um and a lot of people will comment like, "Oh, like, well, I would just be so tired. I don't know how you wake up so early." And it's not that I'm like have more hours in the day. It's more I'm restructuring my day. So like maybe your hours are like 8 to 8, while mine would be 5 to 5. Like I don't have more hours in the day. I just have more productive hours because I know myself and I know as the hours go on, I get less productive and
Mhm.
I get less motivated. So it's kind of just like tapping into yourself. If waking up at like 8 and then working later works for you, then that's what works for you. Like not everyone is wired the same. And yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind because not everyone is like a morning person or has the ability to wake up. Like everyone is wired differently.
One of the things I wanted to chat about, and this kind of goes to where we started working together, is around diet, nutrition, and gut health. And I'd
Mhm.
love you to shed some light and don't feel obligated to share, but, a little bit on how you think about diet and how you think about finding the right foods for you, and then
Mhm.
kind of how you felt as you've progressed through finding what makes you feel good.
Yeah, so I think social media has kind of like confused a lot of people on what is right for them. And I know that like I wanted to build muscle. So I was like, okay, I just have to like eat all this protein and eat all these carbs. And while like I do think that like all bodies like, go through like certain phases and whatever. And it's sometimes you just need to like give yourself a little bit of grace. It sucks when you like put so much time, like I put so much time into like working out, my eating. And it sucks when you look in the mirror and you're just not happy. So I remember I was like at the gym one morning and I looked in the mirror and I was like, I just don't like the way I look. Like I want to hide, like whatever. And it was like a repetitive feeling. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm doing everything right. I'm eating all this protein, whatever. But I would just feel like bloated and heavy and gross at the end of the day. So I was like, okay, I need to start like kind of figuring out like what is wrong. And it's hard because I'm eating like eggs and I'm eating like toast. Like that's good. That's healthy food.
Right.
And I just didn't really know that those are the things that might have been, like making me feel like trash. So that's when we started working together. And I was very reluctant at first because I was like, no, like this is the stuff I eat. Like no, like I was kind of in denial and I didn't want to change because I was like, no, like I'll just keep doing it and eventually like everything will be okay. But in your fitness journey, if something's not working, like it's okay to change stuff. And it just wasn't working for so long that I really needed to just try something new and there's no harm in trying. So that's how I went gluten and dairy free and it's been super successful for me. And it's actually like been such a positive thing for my content because a lot of people are like, I just went gluten and dairy free because I saw you go gluten and dairy free and I feel so much better after like a week. And I always say like, just because I am like sensitive to gluten and dairy doesn't mean you are, but a lot of people have tried it because I have, and they love the results. So it's super awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, so for you, obviously, we did the food inflammation test, and they came back positive. But
Yeah.
when we work, there's two kind of demographics of people we work with. There's people like yourself that honestly, like if you could get 1% better, you'll notice it because you're so in tune to your body and you're
Yeah.
you're hyper, focused on that. But we
Yeah.
also work with the demographic of people that deal with chronic disease and chronic pain that they have the ability to get 50% better.
Yeah.
And the motivations are a little bit different. But oftentimes when we work with people either side of the spectrum, no matter what shows up on their food inflammation test, if we recommend if they want to get the best results, we're not saying you cut out gluten and dairy forever,
Yeah.
but you give your body an 8-week break
Yep.
because there's a couple reasons. But in the United States, our food supply is not the same as the rest of the world. If you go to Europe, a lot of people have traveled. I haven't been over to Europe yet,
Yeah.
but a lot of people say when they eat a really heavy meal, multiple meals over the course of a week in Italy, they're like, I didn't feel as bloated. I didn't feel as bad. Well, we started to look at why. The food supply we have here has a lot of additives that are not allowed in Europe and other parts of the world. And the other thing is, we genetically modify. We'll use wheat as an example and
Mhm.
gluten. We genetically modify to deal with different pesticides like Roundup or glyphosate. So we'll genetically modify the seed so that it doesn't react to the glyphosate we spray on the fields. There's
Yep.
two things that are wrong. Now you have a different form of wheat that has a higher gluten content, but also that glyphosate is designed to kill bugs. Well, what is our stomach? It's
Yeah.
bugs. They're healthy bugs. They're good bugs. But if we're consuming these things that are killing all the good bacteria, now we're out of balance. And when you do that for a week, it might not be the end of the world. But when
Mhm.
you do that for a decade,
Yeah.
now all of a sudden we start to see that rise in chronic disease. So we are big believers at the Feel Good Lab. Like I envision a day when we don't even sell products. I want to help people live a healthy life through their diet and their lifestyle,
Mhm.
maybe supplements if they need it, and then worst case scenario things like our natural pain cream to deal with the chronic issues. But we believe that if you clean up and start with your diet, your mental health, your sleep, the body is going to do most of the work. There might be a little bit left for us to do, but the heavy lifting, no pun intended, is done through our diet. And so most people would respond really well to
Mhm.
taking a break for 8 weeks from gluten and dairy. It doesn't mean you can't reintroduce them, but when you do reintroduce them. So for me, I did the fit test back in 2017. Gluten, dairy, eggs were off the charts for me inflammatory wise. Well, guess what? I had pizza 3 days a week and I could tell. I
Yeah.
also didn't know how sick I was until I got healthy. So I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, that's how my stomach is supposed to feel all the time. That's how my energy level is supposed to feel all the time.
Mhm.
When I cut that out and I started to feel like, whoa, this is what a good gut feels like, being regular, being, all of these different things that come with it. Then when I reintroduced pizza, because it's my favorite food still to
Yeah.
this day, I'm like, I cannot wait to have pizza after 8 weeks.
Yep.
I got so sick afterwards.
Yep.
And that was my body telling me, like, hey, Rye, this is not for you. Now, I found ways for me to be able to still enjoy pizza.
Mhm.
If I have buffalo mozzarella, so it doesn't come from cows, and I found a couple of good gluten free crusts, that for me, I can eat and feel really amazing. I could have that
Yep.
probably every day.
Yep.
Just in my body, that's what I found. Other people can reintroduce these foods and they'll pay attention, maybe keep a food journal or a wellness journal of how they're sleeping and feeling for a 2 week period. And they're not going to see those same repercussions. But what we found is most people do. Most people
Yep.
feel way better without the gluten and dairy. And it's not gluten and dairy, it's the gluten and dairy that we eat here in the United States because
Exactly.
it's just not as healthy as it used to be.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that your diet is more important than working out, like than literally anything. And a lot of people try to outwork a bad diet, and it's just not possible. And you're like, oh, I'm going to the gym. Like, why do I still like not really like the way I look? You really have to tap into your diet. Like you literally are what you eat. And like you said, when I cut out those inflammatory foods, like I instantly felt better and I had wish I had done it earlier. And especially like in the fitness world and industry, people are eating so many like overly processed things because they're like, oh, it has protein in it, like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like the going gluten, dairy, egg free has really forced me to eat just way more just whole foods, like a lot more meat, like a lot more vegetables because usually I'd be like, oh, I'm just gonna have like a protein shake or a protein bar, and like that's good because it's protein. But like that is so overly processed, not real food, like not like filling. So it's kind of forced me to just eat better.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. One of the things we see, so gluten-free is a big craze right now, and you can get gluten-free almost anything. You go to any restaurant, they pretty much have gluten-free options. Oftentimes, the gluten-free options have other issues.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it doesn't have gluten, and that might be the more beneficial than the other additives that are added in to make it taste good.
Hmm.
But between sugar and all these different things, so what we typically recommend is going back to a simpler diet. Not
Yeah.
just, it is important. There's a great book. It's Atomic Habits by James
Oh,
Clear.
love it. Love that book.
Really good book, right? So he talks about, if you're going to change a habit, you can't just quit. You got to replace it. So it
Yep.
is important, say you drink milk every night before you go to bed, to
Yeah.
find a great replacement so that you can still get that same routine, but
Hmm.
without the negative side effects. But if you just go to like the cheapest almond milk you can find, you read the back of that label, that
Hmm.
actually might be more detrimental with all the sugar and different additives in it to make it taste
Hmm.
good. So,
Exactly.
finding there are great alternatives. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that there are not, but it's not as simple as just cutting out gluten and dairy. It's making sure that you're not doing more harm by adding in these other healthy foods. Because you mentioned this too. One thing we notice in this food inflammation test, every single person we've tested, we've done hundreds of these, has at least one healthy food that
Hmm.
in their body is very likely not healthy for them.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. So, like, one good example is, and we sell this product at the Feel Good Lab. It's called curcumin, but it's really from the turmeric root. So, this is
Hmm.
an ancient Indian herb that's literally known as one of the most potent anti inflammatories in
Hmm.
nature. It's amazing. Well, this test that we have is measuring inflammation in the body. Some people have actually turmeric, this anti inflammatory product, showing up as pro-inflammatory for them. So it's just
Hmm.
really important to understand that there's no one size fits all. You might come with an inflammatory condition. It's not as simple as, hey, just take turmeric. Now, most people don't have that, but
Yeah.
some people do. So
Yeah.
it's just, everybody is unique and you got to find what works for you. And you don't need to be perfect, like you said.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't need to go completely gluten dairy free and eat only veggies and meat. Yes, would you be healthier? Probably. But
Yeah.
if you pick something that you can't stick with, then it's
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 not
way
worth it.
worse. It's way
Yeah.
better for you to say, instead of drinking milk every single night, I'm going to have it twice a week. If that's
Exactly.
something you can stick with, then that's amazing. That's great progress.
Exactly. You have to do something that's like attainable for you. And that's like, this is random, but I feel like it's kind of relevant that a lot of people do this like 75 hard challenge, and like they don't, have you heard of that?
No,
Yeah.
can you tell me what it is?
Oh, so 75 hard is like you do two 45-minute workouts a day, you drink a gallon of water, you read 10 pages, you eat a clean diet. And a lot of people fail because they don't do any of that stuff. And then all of a sudden, they're just incorporating all of this stuff in their day, and then they last 3 days and then they can't do it. And they're like, okay. And I just always had an issue with that because that's not attainable. Because after the 75 days, like, are you actually going to keep incorporating those habits? So I really, you know, emphasize how important it is to do things that's attainable for you, and then you can go on to bigger changes. If
Yeah.
only working out for 10 minutes a day is that's what's attainable for you, start with that, and then go for 20 minutes like a couple weeks later, and then 30 minutes. Like, just you have to start small, and then you can add on once it becomes a habit. But that was like the same thing with my eating. Like, I wasn't perfect at first, but I was better than I was before, and I could really build on that. So if cutting out gluten or cutting out dairy is too much of a task to do, just make little changes. Like, oh, maybe you go for the dairy free milk, or you cut out bread. Like, just go for little changes, and then you can make those big changes. Because if you like, it's just not attainable to make these huge changes sometimes.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm 100% on board. What we've found though is the nice thing. So I'll give me as an example. I do my food inflammation test, dairy, gluten, eggs. Pizza's my favorite food. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, like, what am I going to eat?
Yeah.
I kind of knew the pizza didn't make me feel good,
Yeah.
but guess what? I didn't do anything about it. But when
Yeah.
I had the data now.
Yeah.
And the doctor I was working with, we also did some other tests for leaky gut. the doctor, she was like, Rye, if you don't change this, you are going to have an awful situation in 10 years by the
Yeah.
time I'm like in my 40s. So I was really motivated. But
Yeah.
here's what's crazy. By going all in and going completely clean for 8 weeks, and it seems like you had a similar experience, and we have
Yeah.
hundreds of patients we work with at the Feel Good Lab that have the same experience. When they take that 8 week all in, anybody can do anything for 8 weeks. So while it's important that you bite off what you can chew and something you can stick with,
Yeah.
when you do go all in for 8 weeks and you see what those results look like when they compound over
Yeah.
that 8 week period, I know for me, do I cheat every now and then and have pizza if there's a party and that's all there is and I still enjoy it? Yeah. But I'm talking like once every 3-4 months.
Yeah.
My ability to stay clean after having that 8 week reset is unbelievable because I now know what healthy feels like.
Yeah.
And if I were to have cheated once a week for that 8 weeks, it would have been a fraction of the results.
Yeah.
So there is a benefit to that.
Yeah. And a lot of people, like, for me, I feel like I knew that the foods were making me feel like bad, but I just didn't want to believe it. I was like, ignorance is bliss. Like, I don't want to believe it. And then you see the actual
Same thing for
data
me.
and you're
Exactly.
like, okay, so now I know, so I actually have to start doing this. Because if you had never, like, if we had never talked or like reached, or you never reached out, I would have probably been in the same place because I didn't want to believe that I couldn't eat, like, or not that I couldn't eat, that it was making me inflamed to eat like bread and like eggs in my usual diet. I didn't want to believe that because I was like, that's healthy food. Like, no, like that's like helping me. And then I saw the actual data. I was like, okay, I need to like change stuff. And change is scary, but change cultivates growth. So
And you can always go back. That's the important
yeah,
thing, right? That's why what I'm saying about gluten and dairy, I'm not saying it's guaranteed it's going to make you feel better. You can go
yeah,
back. It's like, a good example is like I work with my dad now. Well,
hmm,
I actually went far away from the family business of pharmacy and functional medicine, and I worked as an aerospace engineer.
hmm,
I mentor a lot of students at UConn that want to go into entrepreneurship and things like that. And I
hmm,
recommend if they're not already there, I say go follow your major, get a job because it's important to know that the grass is not greener. So
yep,
my point with this is like you go gluten dairy free and it doesn't work particularly well for you. Now you've tried it and you can kind of go and you can feel better about what you're doing. It's not like because a lot of people hold themselves accountable and they might feel shitty like, man, I know that this isn't making me feel good. Well, give it a try. Once
yeah,
you do that, you can kind of relieve that stress of like knowing what's right for you. And
exactly,
I know your followers, like, again, because I work with some of them, like,
hmm,
you have a cool niche that you found online of people that are very motivated at a young age because we are what we eat and we
hmm,
are the effort that we put in from an exercise standpoint and a mindfulness. And
hmm,
the younger we can figure that out, the better the rest of our lives are going to be. My dad used to say to me, right, I'm a big car guy. And
yeah,
and back in high school, I had like the shittiest cars you could ever have. But
yeah,
even then he'd be like, how much did you spend on your car this year? I'd be like, well, tires and this and that and that, a couple $1,000.
yeah,
How much did you spend on your body? I'd be like, why do I need to spend on my body? You
yeah,
know, like, well, because you get one of them. And
exactly,
and by the way, the things I was talking about with my car was not to make it faster or cooler. It was just to maintain it. We
yeah,
was just talking about maintaining my body.
yep,
And so the nice thing and the exciting thing about working with you is it's shifting. The tide is turning.
it
We
really,
are realizing it's a pendulum always. We relied so much on the healthcare model and we started to go into the doctor for these chronic diseases that often are developing because of this lifestyle, including our diet, like we talked about. But we go in and the tools they use to treat us are the same tools if we break our leg or get in a car accident. We get the best acute care in the world. But when
hmm,
it comes to chronic issues, we're using the same band-aids and we're
hmm,
not addressing the root cause. The root cause is
exactly,
not easy. A lot of people don't want to change, especially people that are older and been doing this way for 40 years. They don't want to be told that they need to eat differently. They want to just take a pill. But we're starting to learn that there is no way that taking a pill for the rest of your life to mask a symptom is the right way to treat chronic disease. We know that it's not. If it's masking symptom does nothing to address the underlying root cause, you're going to not just still be sick, you're going to get sicker because that pill, you're going to need more and more of the potent medicine to deal with the symptom over time that eventually not only are you going to be sick with the root cause that existed before, but you're also going to be sick from the side effects from the medicine.
Exactly. And when you told me that analogy with the rock in the shoe, I've like actually applied that to everything because like for example, if I had a headache, usually like maybe last year I'd be like, oh, I need to take ibuprofen. Now, if I have it or like Advil, whatever. If I have a headache, I'm like, did I drink enough water? Did I eat enough? Did I get enough sleep? Like kind of tapping in those like very basic like human like necessities, water, food, sleep. You can solve a lot of your issues. Or like I always had an issue or like just a it gave me an icky feeling when you'd walk in the doctor. Oh, I have acne. Oh, here's birth control. Not
Yeah.
what are you eating? Like what stuff are you putting on your face? That like just kind of tapping into things you can literally do yourself to solve a lot of your issues is so helpful. And I think that's also kind of an issue with the fitness industry is you see all these like gut health powders, gut health pills. Well, what are you eating? Are you drinking enough water? Like, are you sleeping? Are you moving your body? It's just a lot of people just want like one solution to fix an issue, but that's not the healthy way to do it.
And it's human nature, and we've been trained that way. And so the analogy for those listening is, and this is kind of the conventional medicine model versus functional medicine. It is not this simple, but this analogy just simplifies it. If you go in and you have foot pain, you go to a doctor today, for the most part, they're going to measure your pain on a subjective 1 to 10 scale and give you a painkiller or a pain reliever. But ultimately, if you go to a functional medicine doctor or somebody that's doing a little bit more root cause analysis, they might identify that you have a rock in your shoe. It's never that simple. And I'm not trying to, especially with chronic pain, that's what we work in every day. And I'm not trying to oversimplify it. But the reality is, if we don't address whatever that rock is, and that rock might be different things for different people, and we don't remove that, you're never going to get better. And so what my dad does and what we believe in here at the Feel Good Lab is just the relentless pursuit of the root cause. Even if we don't fully get there, it is so much better than just masking symptoms. And the reality is the number one thing that my dad brings to patients is hope. People come to him, the number one thing they say is, I've tried everything. Gene, I've tried everything. They're coming to him because it's a last-ditch effort. They've tried everything in the conventional medical model. And what they do is they work together. It might take a month, it might take a year, it might take 5 years, but they relentlessly pursue what is causing it. Oftentimes, it's a mixture of diet, genetics, sleep, or lack thereof, and this combination in this functional medicine wheel, like you talk about, by identifying all of these different things. Maybe one of them is a bigger culprit than all, but almost in every person, it's a mixture of hydration, sleep, diet, nutrition, stress. By getting those things under control, the body is the most amazing tool in the entire world, in my opinion. Our human body. I mean, it can heal, it can do things that we thought were completely impossible, but you need to get it the tools. You need to basically get it so it can perform its intended function. And another thing that I wanted to mention that you brought up. So you mentioned sleep, hydration, and nutrition. And so the way I look at this, and I want your perspective on it, I always, for some reason, looked at nutrition first, maybe because we talk about it the most. And then I started realizing that I was so dehydrated. I drink a lot of coffee. I was drinking a decent amount of water, but what I learned is the water we drink from the tap usually has all the minerals stripped from it. So if you're not getting the right electrolytes and minerals back into your body, you're really not hydrating yourself. And so I started drinking electrolytes. It really helped. And then I started focusing on my sleep. I got an Aura ring. I started tracking it, paying attention. And all of a sudden it hit me. Like, you can go so many weeks without eating food. In fact, I'm about to do a fast next week. My dad just got off of one. I mean, it's not that hard to skip food for a week. It really isn't. We can survive easily. You can go, I don't know, maybe a couple days without water, and you can go even less without sleep. They don't even allow us to do clinical studies on sleep deprivation because it is so dangerous. So my hierarchy goes to like, oh, wow, sleep is probably the most important, right? Then you have hydration, making sure you're properly hydrated. And by the way, those are pretty much freebies. Yeah, maybe you have to pay a couple of cents for some electrolytes to get in your water if you're drinking tap water. But like, those are not expensive at all. and it's
Hmm.
kind of like a baseline. And then nutrition is probably a little bit more personalized, like we've talked about, hopefully getting it from your diet. But the reality is even greens and vegetables are stripped from a lot of the nutritional value just based on the way we farm and do things today. So
Yep.
probably some level of supplementation, but those three things can kind of solve a lot of our problems. What
Hmm.
do you agree with that? Kind of my theory on
Oh,
it?
completely. Especially, I feel like a lot of times, again, in like this fitness space, people think it's exercise, then it's food, then it's water, then it's sleep. Like you'll get 4 hours sleep, but then you'll go to the gym for 2 hours. No, like it's so much more important and beneficial to like get your sleep. And yeah, I completely agree. It's very basic. A lot of the issues, at least I found like my bloating, I could kind of fix that through like proper hydration, sleep, and nutrition. And like again, if I have a headache, it's probably because I didn't drink enough water or like didn't get enough sleep. So like those kind of basic things I've kind of returned back to like the root of all things rather than being like, okay, I need to go take Advil. Okay, I need to, I don't even know, like go on birth control. So yeah, I completely agree.
Cool. Well, I got one final question I like to ask people, Julie. So, you know, 1 year from now, what are we at? January 15th or something today? Yeah. So
Yeah.
1 year from now, if you were to say, oh my goodness, you look back on the last year and say, holy shit, I crushed it this year. I absolutely did everything I wanted to do and more. What's that
Yeah.
look like for you? Where are you trying to go in the next year?
So as I mentioned before to you, I'm getting my personal training certification, so I'm gonna start that up. So I'll start having clients because obviously I've built this whole platform and it's based on a lot of like workouts and coaching people. But I kind of want to get more personal with it and like take on actual clients. So that I've been applying to internships in the summer because I am communications major. I would like to pursue that after college. My social medias, I kind of want it to always just be like a facet of my life, not like my whole life, because my like lifestyle and my health is just a part of my life that I like to share. I don't want to make it a career because then I kind of find that it would kind of take it away from me a little bit. So I just want to continue sharing that. I want to obviously after I graduate have an actual job. Um, keep kind of working on my training, my strength training, getting stronger. Right now I'm kind of thinking about going to do like a little bit of a calorie surplus, just grow more muscle. Maybe like travel some places, and yeah, just keep getting my degree. I'm only a junior right now, so I'll be in college in 1 year, but keep up with my content and yeah, keep spreading health and wellness and bettering yourself and the message that bettering yourself is hot.
Yeah, we love being a partner with you. It's been a lot of fun. I know I'm learning a lot, and your content is so funny. One of the things I really like is you really are specifically targeting your demographic.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned before, there's a lot of fitness influencers that probably have like a 50-50 guy girl ratio. Like
Yeah.
as much as I follow it and I learn from it, yours
Yeah.
is definitely intended for your demographic, which is
Yep.
you. It's
Yep.
college age girls that are dealing with the same struggles that you have. And you've built this amazing community of people
Yep.
that are like minded. And so I'm excited to see what you do as you continue to build that.
Thank you.
So it was a ton of fun, Julie. Well, good luck this semester at school. And we appreciate all your support here at the Feel Good Lab.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.